Hello, and welcome to the 29th episode of my Failed Franchises series, and the third episode of my Western Railway Franchises mini-series. In this series, I look at defunct rail operators and see if they should be deemed as a failure, with this mini-series looking at the operators in the west of England. In the last episode, we looked at Wessex Trains and their operations from 2001 to 2006, but today we're looking at two operators. These operators were the only two Thames Franchise operators, Thames Trains and First Great Western Link. We'll ask the question of whether or not these two operators were good, or should they, perhaps, be deemed as a failure. Do like and subscribe so you don't miss subsequent episodes, and consider becoming a channel member if you do enjoy this video. Thank you. We begin in 1996 when Britain's railway network was being privatised. A new Thames Trains franchise was created for local services out of London Paddington and across South West England and the Midlands. The franchise was awarded to a joint consortium of Go Ahead and ex-British rail managers, with the new Thames Trains operator commencing operations on the 13th of October 1996 on an 8-year contract. The franchise would operate 11 key routes: Stratford-upon-Avon to London Paddington, Hereford to London Paddington via Worcester, Oxford to Bicester Town, Bedwyn to Paddington, Reading to Paddington, Reading to Basingstoke, Reading to Gatwick Airport, Reading to Henley-on-Thames, Maidenhead to Marlow, Slough to Windsor, and Greenford to Paddington. The company inherited 58 trains, 37 Class 165s and 21 Class 166 turbos, retaining the Network South East livery until the warranty for the paintwork ended in 2000, with a white, blue and green livery applied to all turbos henceforth. The company, however, started off poorly, with Thames Trains being exposed as the second worst operator in the UK for its punctuality for 1998. Its punctuality figure of 83.7% was only enough for a D grade in the OPRAF, Office of Passenger Rail Franchising, rankings. This coincided with Thames Trains' complaints rising by 500%, with complaints about train performance and service quality rising from 29 to 168, whilst overall complaints were up 309% from 1998. Thames were deemed the worst operator in the Western region, with overcrowding on peak time services deemed to be their worst problem. Although punctuality of 93.3% for Thames by 1999, and a new direct Oxford to Bristol service launched in conjunction with First Great Western was promising, things would not get much better for the operator. On the 5th of October 1999, 31 people lost their lives in the Ladbroke Grove crash. The crash occurred at 8:11, after a Thames Trains Class 165, driven by Michael Hodder, overran a red signal whilst leaving Paddington for a Bedwyn. The turbo strayed into the path of a First Great Western HST from Cheltenham to Paddington, with a combined speed of 130 miles an hour. In the collision, both drivers were killed, whilst 29 others died, 23 in the Class 165. A resulting fire also led to 417 injuries in one of the largest rail crashes in Britain in recent memory. The blame was eventually put on Thames Trains for lack of driver training and awareness, with the driver of the turbo in the crash, a newly trained driver, who had no proper route maps or knowledge, whilst his instructor, Raymond Adams, had not trained anyone for 3 years prior to training Michael, with Raymond given no official guidance from Thames Trains management on how to train drivers. A further report saw claims that Thames Trains could have stopped the crash if they had trimmed profits to improve driver training and safety practices, with Train Protection Warning Systems, TPWS, costing £5 million to install on its trains, whilst Thames's profits were around £3 to £5 million per year. Thames were fined a measly £2 million for the incident, and had to pay £75,000 in costs, with Go Ahead, who had purchased all shares of the company in June 1998, taking blame for the crash. Even when the line reopened 2 weeks after, the line into Paddington was quickly suspended after an unexploded World War II bomb was found near the line. Things just couldn't improve for Thames. And things got worse, with a survey in August 2000 finding that rail commuters believed services were better before privatisation. Nearly 2% of all Thames services were more than 15 minutes late, with communications manager Martin Walter blaming the congestion on the Great Western Main Line and lack of additional stock the reason for the poor service. Passengers received some good news though when it was confirmed in early September 2001 that rail fares would be decreasing to attempt to bring passengers back onto the rail network following several large-scale crashes such as Hatfield, Selby and Ladbroke Grove. fares would decrease by 1.4% for season ticket holders in 2002, which, although not a huge decrease, would support season ticket holders, with fares rising 0.6% for all other tickets. Some season ticket holders would be worse off when, in September 2001, Thames removed a peak service from Oxford towards the small lesser served stations of Coombe, Finstock and Ascot. Commuters for these stations would have to wait at least an hour for a train which called at the stations. Passengers protested in 2002 to a little-known MP called David Cameron, highlighting a Thames Trains contract which stated that they must serve the three stations every weekday before 6 p.m. Thames Trains' managing director, Terry Worrell, highlighted how the 5 p.m. train had to be 3 carriages to allow everyone to board, but the platforms were too small at the 3 halt stations, with the turbo trains not having SDO, meaning the company would have to lock one coach out of use completely for the whole trip, or use just one single door across the 3 stations, called a butterfly switch panel. This was deemed to be unacceptable by the Strategic Rail Authority, who authorised a change in timetable for at least a year whilst the solution was sorted. Eventually, the SRA ordered Thames Trains to reinstate the cooling points for the 5 p.m. train at the 3 halt stations, using a 2-car turbo, with an extra Great Malvern train put on 15 minutes after to make up for a reduction in capacity. These services still both exist to this day. In July, a watchdog highlighted concerns over the Bicester, Oxford and Bristol service operated by Thames, suggesting that there was a disproportionate amount of cancellations on the routes. According to the Rail Passengers Committee, huge improvements were needed to the routes, which had poor punctuality and a lack of passenger information. This came at a time when the government was deliberating over whether they should reduce the amount of franchises, potentially merging Wessex, Thames and First Great Western into one Greater Western franchise. This was confirmed to be going ahead by April 2006, with First looking to buy out Thames Trains before the new 2006 franchise. Elsewhere, infrastructural issues hit the Great Western Main Line, with track damage and point signals affecting Thames in August and October, with defects near Paddington and Banbury affecting Thames, First Great Western, Virgin and Chiltern services. In January 2003, the Strategic Rail Authority announced major timetable cuts, with the new Oxford to Bristol service, operated by First Great Western and Thames, being cut hugely, with 18 daily services withdrawn, ending the direct Oxford to Bristol service entirely, despite only starting in 1998. The Strategic Rail Authority blamed low passenger usage and low punctuality for the cuts, with the authority hoping to improve punctuality by cutting services on the busy Great Western Main Line. However, unions were furious at the move, which saw, altogether, over 100 services cut from the timetable per day across the rail network. The RMT called the cuts a move of lunacy, with the head of the ASLEF union agreeing. Also in January, First Great Western once again pressed forward plans to merge First Great Western with Thames Trains before the 2006 formal merger. First Great Western's managing director, Chris Kinchin-Smith, suggested that following complaints regarding a lack of stopping services at Didcot, Slough and Maidenhead, a combined First Great Western and Thames train operator could increase services by merging resources and introducing a more realistic and efficient timetable. The Strategic Rail Authority confirmed that it was, indeed, looking at a potential early merger, whereby First would take control of the Thames Trains franchise, operating it as a separate franchise from 2004 until the 2006 merger, but would be able to mix and match resources with First Great Western's operations. In May, unions feared that Thames Trains would launch mass job cuts, after Thames confirmed that the government would reduce the £34 million subsidy to zero by the end of the 2004 contract. Thames said that it would have to consider job cuts to ensure that it kept costs under control, with the Bicester to Oxford services having evening trains cut to reduce costs. Joe Twite, leader of the TSSA union, said that the job cuts would mean fewer ticket office staff, potential ticket office closures, and potential future service cuts. However, services from the December 2003 timetable would improve for local stations between Didcot and Paddington, with 5 extra Thames Trains Monday to Friday services announced, and 11 on Saturdays, with more Thames services calling at the stations. In December 2003, Thames formally pleaded guilty to breaking health and safety laws over the Ladbroke Grove-Paddington rail disaster. This had greater consequences, however, with the Strategic Rail Authority banning Thames Trains from the network following the expiration of its contract in March 2004, meaning that, even if Go Ahead wanted to, they would be unable to rebid for the franchise. Instead, it was formally confirmed that the First Group would take over the running of the Thames Trains franchise, with the franchise simply being renamed Thames and operating under the First Great Western Link name. For the end of 2003, it was confirmed that Thames had been ranked the 14th best operator in the UK out of 21, receiving a 39.4% satisfaction rating from Guardian readers, up from 15 in 2002. And with that, on the 1st of April 2004, Thames Trains was no more, with First Great Western Link the new name for local services out of Paddington. The company inherited the 36 Class 165s and 21 Class 166s from Thames Trains, announcing shortly after commencing operations that they would soon no longer be running services to Stratford-upon-Avon, handing over operations to Chiltern Railways by December 2004, releasing 5 Class 165s to the operator. As for branding, due to the franchise only lasting until the full 2006 merger, the units kept the same Thames Trains livery, with First branding temporarily applied, with First still not knowing whether it would run past 2006. In October 2004, First Great Western Link launched a new driver training program to minimise delays caused by leaves on the line. Drivers would be trained with advanced braking systems and would be given maps of high-risk areas, whilst Network Rail would use its new multi-purpose vehicles to clear leaves and spread sandite on the line to make tracks less slippery and reduce potential delays. It wasn't all good news, however, as residents in Tackley, Hayford and King Sutton would have peak services in the evening cut from 4 to 2 in December 2004. Residents wrote to Witney MP David Cameron, who met First Great Western Link Managing Director Alison Forster. First Great Western Link eventually decided to re-add a third train to its timetable, but at 7:50 p.m, many residents said it was far too late to be of use. The company did look at potentially extending a previous London to Oxford service, which had a 90-minute layover at Oxford, enough time to make the journey to Banbury and back via the 3 stations. In 2004, Chiltern Railways implied that they could potentially one day link Oxford and Bicester Town to the Chiltern Main Line, suggesting the addition of a new curve of track between Bicester Town and just south of Bicester North would allow Chiltern services to run from Oxford to Marylebone, with the branch line doubled, stations rebuilt, and a new station near Kidlington built as Oxford Parkway. However, the plan would most likely, according to Oxfordshire County Council, who was supporting the proposal, not go ahead until the mid-2010s, when a change in government policy occurred. There would be new services to Paddington from June 2005, however, with a new Heathrow Connect company founded, with the British Airports Authority and First Great Western Link teaming up to provide services between Heathrow and London Paddington, operated with Class 360s and running local services calling at all stations, including Hayes and Harlington. In July 2005, services were disrupted hugely on the Chiltern Main Line due to a tunnel collapse in the Gerrards Cross area. This led to a surge of passengers onto First Great Western Link services, leading to many overcrowded services for several months until August 2005, when the line was reopened again. Positive news was given to the whole network in 2005, when Network Rail said that rail services were now averaging 85% punctuality, whilst there was a record 16% cut in delay minutes over the past year. Elsewhere, First Great Western Link had completed several major station renovations, such as at Hamborough, where 50 new cycle spaces, new lighting and undercover cycle parking had been installed, costing £65,000. In November, First confirmed that its profits had been hindered by rising fuel costs and terror attacks on London. Fuel added £13 million to its bills, whilst profits fell from just shy of £65 million in 2004 to £55 million in 2005. Nonetheless, First said its yearly performance was strong when taking into account the terror attacks and fuel rises, with the firm submitting formal bids to the Kent, Thameslink and Greater Western franchises. In December, First was confirmed to have won both the Greater Western and Thameslink franchises. The company would, by April 2006, take over all Wessex train services, whilst finally incorporating First Great Western Link into the First Great Western brand itself. The new £1 billion contract would see First retain all services between Oxford and Bicester, with no cuts to the service. However, local MPs suggested the company shouldn't be celebrating a lack of cuts, and should instead be looking at expansion of the franchise and service frequency. Even previous planned service cuts would not all be scrapped with the new franchise. In March 2006, a month before the handover of all First Great Western Link services to First Great Western, the company announced plans for its December timetable, which would see 2 fast peak-hour trains from Didcot to London scrapped, with a further 3 return services in the evening also cut. Wantage MP Ed Visey suggested that these cuts could cause overcrowding on other services, whilst encouraging more car use. First Great Western Link and First Great Western launched a full consultation into the plans, with the proposed cuts quietly shelved after services were handed over to First Great Western. And on the topic of service handovers, on the 31st of March 2006, First Great Western Link quietly slipped out of existence, replaced by First Great Western, so not a huge change. However, the turbos were given a fresh lick of paint, with First Great Western and later GWR transforming travel out of Paddington, as we will see in the fourth and final episode of this mini-series. So, were Thames Trains and First Great Western Link a failure? Starting with Thames, they suffered at the beginning of their franchise from overcrowding, poor punctuality and a terrible safety record, improving on this slightly but not significantly, so can perhaps be deemed as a failure. As for First Great Western Link, they only had operations of the franchise for under 2 years, so couldn't achieve a great deal. Threats of service cuts, overcrowding, and average at best punctuality scores plagued the company, so they too could be deemed as a failure. But what do you think? Do let me know in the comments below, and do consider liking and subscribing if you've enjoyed. Special thanks to my first class members, Callum Martin Bell and Crispin McKee, as well as my Business Zone members, Andrew Bowen, Anthony Harris, Anthony James Moore, ARK, Connor Grieg, Craig Mitchell 43, Dave CDF, Gordon Walker, Jay Teco, Lewis C21 and That Transport Girl. You can get your name on this list from as little as £2.99 a month and help me to make my videos. I do appreciate it, so thanks a lot. Also, thanks to everyone that's let me use their footage for today's video. You can find their channels in the description or pinned comment below. Once again, thanks ever so much for watching. Check out my Blue Sky, Twitter and Discord server in the links below, and I hope to see you again soon. Goodbye.